In this video, I'm going to review the basics of dividing polynomials, focusing on dividing monomials. For example, the problem that's shown at the bottom of the screen right now. That looks pretty nasty, but when you understand how to do it, they're really pretty simple. Let's take a look at the steps to dividing monomials. It's basically the opposite of multiplication. So when we multiplied monomials, we multiplied the coefficients and we added the exponents of the variables. When we divide polynomials, we are going to divide the coefficients. Those are the numbers before the variables. So in this case, 6 on the top of the fraction and 2 on the bottom of the fraction. So as shown here, we're going to divide 6 by 2, and we get 3. That's the first part of the work that we need to do in this problem. If you don't get a number when you divide it, you can just reduce the fraction. For instance, if this had been 6/4, that would have reduced to 3/2. And you would want to do that. You want to reduce the fraction that's created by the coefficients. So either divide or reduce the fraction. In some cases, you won't be able to do either, but that's okay. You still need to attempt to do that. Then let's move on to the variables. So here we line up. Let me erase this and focus on our x's now. We have x to the 6th over x to the 5th. So we kind of set up that fraction and we subtract the exponents. We subtract the bottom from the top. So it's going to be x to the 6 minus 5, or x to the 1st, which we normally just write as x. Moving on to y. We have y to the 3rd over y. We set up that fraction, y to the 3rd over y. That becomes y to the 3 minus 1, remembering that when there is no exponent, there really is an exponent of 1. We subtract those two, and we are left with y squared. So we put together our answer at the end here, 3 times x times y squared. And that's our answer. And once you get good at these, you're going to look at this problem over here, and you are almost immediately going to see that answer. You won't have to quite work it out in all of these details, but that takes some practice. So let's get to a few practice questions. We start out with 8x to the 4th divided by, that's all a fraction means, is divided by 2x to the 2nd. Let me break this first one down the way I did in that example before. 8 over 2, that reduces down to just the whole number 4. And x to the 4th over x to the 2nd is going to be x to the 4 minus 2, which is just equal to x squared. Our answer will be 4 times x squared. I'll leave that up since we have enough room in this problem. In our second problem, we have 6 over 4. We divide that and you will get the number 1.5, but then you should convert that back into a fraction because we don't want to deal with decimals when we're doing these kind of problems. So convert that back into a fraction and you will get 3/2. That's what our coefficients 6 over 4 reduces to. Then we move over to our variable. We have a to the 5th over a to the 2nd. And once you start to do a few of these problems, you're not going to write it out like I did over here. You can just subtract the exponents, 5 minus 2, and we're going to end up with a to the 3rd. 5 minus 2 is 3. Our variable is a. We need to do that for every variable. That's what problem 3 is going to demonstrate to us. Here we have 2 different variables. So we start out with the 7, and we're trying to deal with our coefficients, and we notice that, well, we don't have a coefficient on the bottom, but remember that there's always a coefficient of 1. So it's really just 7 divided by 1, which is just 7. Then we have x to the 5th divided by x to the 4th. 5 minus 4 is 1. That's just x. And then we have y to the 4th divided by y to the 4th. Well, this one might be confusing because 4 minus 4 is 0. What does that mean? Well, remember that anything divided by itself is just the number 1. And we could write 7 times x times 1, but normally we don't write that 1, and our answer would just be 7x. Now, a common way to think about this is to just cancel out the y to the 4. Whenever you see a variable with the same exponent on the top and the bottom, you can just ignore them. They are going to cancel each other out. So that allows you to just deal with the rest of the problem. All right, let's move on to problem 4. We have our coefficients of 10 and 2. Let's try to divide that. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So it looks like 5 will be the coefficient of our answer. A to the 5th divided by a to the 2nd. 5 minus 2 is 3. That leaves us with a to the 3rd. B to the 4th divided by b to the 4th. This is the situation that we just had over in problem 3. We can just cancel those out and ignore that part. And here's a situation we haven't run into so far in these problems. We just have the variable c, and it's on the top of our fraction. We're not dividing it by anything. There's no c on the bottom, so that will just carry through to our answer. There's nothing we can do with that c. So our answer to this problem becomes 5 times a to the 3rd power times c. All right, that wraps up this video on dividing monomials. The next video will cover dividing relatively simple polynomials.